Hello guys, and welcome to yet another chapter of GSX Level 2 tutorials. Now this is a new chapter on pushbacks since the last one was kind of outdated with this new release of GSX Level 2 version 2.6 that was released on the first week of July 2019. And so we're going to do this tutorial as if we haven't ever made one before. Now, we are sitting in Los Angeles by FS Dream Team. It's one of my favorite sceneries. It's done brilliantly by the same developers that have done GSX Level 2. And I've chosen this scenery also because it's a perfect one to show you what this new system of pushback that is not tied to the Fcats anymore. Now, as you know, probably by now, the pushbacks that we were doing with GSX until very recently, until this update was released, we were slave to the Fcat. The Fcat, for those of you who are not familiar with what this is nothing more than sort of like a floor plan of what the airport is, where are the runways, where are the taxiways, where are your parkings, and so forth. It's sort of like the base of the layout of your scenery. Now, until now, the pushbacks that we could do with GSX could only be done working on top of these taxi lanes and using the taxi nodes or taxi points, which are these blue dots right here, as the nodes to turn and to stop the plane. Now there's two possible ways of doing a pushback. Okay. Now if we go into customization of the scenery of GSX Level 2, we are going to see a lot of options, and everything that has to do with pushbacks, it's on this area right here. Now it comes with plenty more possibilities than it did before. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to erase this. I'm going to start from scratch. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Cartagena files that we developed, that I developed for FS for you guys, and it's published in the FS Dream Team page. You can see the link below this tutorial. And the way I do the pushbacks is I delete the default naming of the pushback, which is normally nose to the right, tail to the left, and so forth. Now what I do is I name the pushback by saying facing south or facing north or whatever you think the controller is going to tell you, and I leave this tip here for the less advanced pilots as being nose to the left. Okay. Now this is a bit confusing, this area here, because in GSX they mention the pushback number 1, which is okay. If you choose both pushbacks, okay, let's assume we delete this one, you're going to have the option to configure both pushbacks positions. Here is the text where you can explain the choice on the menu when you select the pushback. Okay. If you had the option to do both, nose to the right and nose to the left, what I usually do is I do something like this, facing north being the opposite pushback, and I would go and say nose to the right. Since this is this gate right here, which is B42A, this, of course, this pushback will only be offered nose to the left, as you can exit this way. Nose to the right, you will be going towards the building, so that option would not be set available. Now, since we're going to get rid of nose to the right, we're going to set it off. Okay, sorry, left, there you go. Now, if I don't add any coordinates on this position, what GSX does, regardless of the name you give here, if you don't do anything here and you leave this checkbox mark, which means snap to the Fcat, means that you are going to follow the old traditional way of doing pushbacks, which in this case the plane will go to a bit towards the back, and it will turn the nose towards the left. So if you want to use towards the left, the option that you should choose is the second one. Although it says right, when you don't put any values here, it's going to do a nose to the left. That's why I say it's a kind of confusing. Now, if you add a coordinate here for a pushback using a snap to Fcat, okay, which is following the Fcat, the coordinate that you should enter should always be the coordinate of a taxi node, and you can get this coordinate using this Fcat. Okay, now the new version, it allows you to set the right point where you want to stop the plane by using the 3D editor that we're going to use right now. Now, later on, after this pushback snap to Fcat method, I'm going to show you how to do a not to snap to Fcat method, which allows you to do sort of like a free flow of pushback that is absolutely essential for parkings such as this one right here, which is gate number 40, this one right here. Now, up until now, this version 2.6, on situations like this where you're not allowed to make a nose to the left, the plane could not go this way because you're actually missing a taxi line here. And why are you missing that? Well, they do that because if they did that, the plane would probably crash against the building. Now, with the new version 2.6, without using the Fcat, you have the possibility of creating a fake node around here, which is called intermediate pushback, and the plane is going to search for this with a curve. It's going to do a curve around here, and it's going to leave the plane on that position or in a further back position from that point if you choose to, okay? And you would leave the plane facing the direction that you wish. Now, if you look here, when you select the snap to Fcat, it does not allow you to set a heading. Why is this? Because it's redundant, okay? If you're slave to the Fcat, which is snap to Fcat, the plane can only be facing in the direction of the taxi lane. So it's not like you have a choice, so you're not given one. So let's go to the first case, which is snap to Fcat. The option that I've given it is facing south. When you edit an Fcat, I always have it on hand, although you don't need it for this new version. I find it very helpful because it helps me give the names of the pushbacks, okay? When you open with the Airport Design Editor, which is something you can find in the internet, if you type it on Google, you can download this software, is freeware, and you open the Fcat, and the name of the Fcat, as you know by now, is this file over here that's located on this folder, which is where FS Dream Team Los Angeles version 2 software is located. I have it right here, and this is the name of the Fcat. So if I open with the Fcat, I know how to name the pushback, okay? If you're here, the controller will tell you pushback approved facing south. Why facing south? Because this is south. When you open the Fcat, it's always going to be on the sense, being this the north and being this the south, west, and east, okay? Now, having said this, let's start doing the snap to Fcat, and we're going to press the customize pushback position, okay? Now, on this new, hold on a second, I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to get the plane ready for pushback. So now we're going to go inside the 3D editor, and what they've done in this release, they've added to the 3D editor, you know, the 3D editor is where you use the keys F1 and 4 to select the different objects, to move them around. You can move the jetways, you can move everything, you can turn it around by you can move the information, you can move all the objects by using the arrows, and you could also move by using F7 and F8 to turn them around, or using the numeric keypad number 1 and 3, you can do the moving of the jetways slower or faster, okay? okay? You can do the same with the plane, and you can do the same with the pushback. So if we keep on pressing F4 till we are in the parking position, then we go to the pushback truck, and then it's going to offer you, after the stop and the pushback truck, the customized pushback number 2. Why does it say it's number 2? Because it's the second option, okay? It's this option right here, the right direction. Now it calls it number 2, and I think they should call it number 2 in here too, because it's kind of confusing as it was, and now adding a new name is just not going to make it easier. But in any case, this is how it works. Now that you have this option selected, it tells you are in terminal number 4, gate 42 alpha, FXX name gate A42. That's just the name of the Fcat parking place that FS Dream Team has selected for this parking spot. And it tells you also that the name you've given it is facing south, nose to the left. True, we're using the snap to Fcat system, and it's going to tell you to do basically the final point of the pushback, set the plane gear there, gear where you want the pushback to stop. So that's what we're going to do. Now you're going to see now that it's going to start drawing on the ground the same blue dots that you have right here, and it's going to also draw the taxi lane, okay, with a green line. Now sometimes you can see this and sometimes you can't, and I think it's a little glitch they have, because depending on your position of the camera and where you're facing the plane, you won't be able to see these dots. So you're gonna have to move around until they fix this. Okay, oops, sorry about this. So now we start using the arrows. I press the back arrow. Okay, now you see that the taxi nodes are here. Okay, you see now the taxi line is being drawn. I'm going too far. I'm going to go here, which is exactly where the taxi lane can go either way, using your wheel as a reference point. Okay, now if you want to go towards that direction, you're gonna have to press the right. Okay, so now it's going to tell you that you can push back towards that direction, and it's going to show you where is the next taxi node. That's what I'm saying, that depending on your camera view, you'll be able to see it. Okay, you have to be right here, and then you can see there's a taxi node right behind. So if you leave it here, you've already configured your pushback to the left. Now, if you didn't do any of this and you leave it all blank, including the heading, it would probably do the same, okay? Because it has an artificial intelligence, and this is only necessary in case you want to go to a node, a taxi node, that is not exactly the one right behind you, okay? If you wanted to do, let's say you want to do a pushback to the right and you want the plane to stop here, you're gonna have to tell him to go further back than this first taxi node. So you want him to tell that you have to go behind these two taxi nodes to reach this parking position, if that's what you wanted, okay? But since in this case we don't need that, okay, this got stuck again, hold on, there you go. Now since in this case we don't need this, actually we can even erase this if we wanted. We could leave that there, it won't hurt you. But if we just press something like this, you would get exactly the same result if you're going to that nose to the left position, okay? As I said, the artificial intelligence, when this is empty, it will take the plane on the first space after a curve, nose to the left. It will make a nose to the left, and it will stop between this node and this node. That's what the artificial intelligence of GSX does on its own, okay? Now, this is pretty basic. We've seen that before. I think most of you are familiar, since it's exactly the same system as we had before. So I'm going to go and show you the new way of doing pushback, okay? Now, we're going to go to gate number 40, okay? And you see that I have here already a customization done. I'm going to erase it and we're going to do it from scratch, okay? Now, you see here that I say nose to the left, and you could say, oh, that's wrong, because nose to the left should be on this box in here. Well, actually, I did it there because since I enter a coordinate here, once you enter a number here, the artificial intelligence is not making any choice whether to go left or right, and especially if you're doing a not to snap to Fcat pushback. And if you don't have this selected, you're going to actually, the GSX is not going to make that guess of if you're going to the left or to the right. It's just going to ask you to configure the pushback on your own. And now, since we only have one option selected, nose to the left, when you go to customize pushback, okay, you see this, sometimes this takes a long time to refresh. So now it has refreshed, but we see that taxi node, it's left there. So I'm going to show you. The first thing is going to tell you, here's going to tell you something different. It's going to tell you we're in terminal 4, gate 40. This is the Fcat name. It's going to tell you the radius, the heading. I'm not quite sure why they tell you this here, because I think that's relevant just to the whole thing, not to the pushback, but so be it. Now, if this were right, okay, it should say here, and for some reason it doesn't, it should say facing south, nose to the left, and it doesn't, okay? But let's do the customization and let's see if it, after we've done it, we get that information there. Now, we press again. Okay, now it says it. Sometimes it takes a bit of work to get this right, okay? Because I think they're still working on some glitches, but regarding the pushback itself, it's working pretty well. Now, what it's asking you to do is asking you, see, now you're not forced to follow the taxi lane. You can move the plane to the sides also, and you can also turn it like this, which you can do if you're using the snap to Fcat. Now we're kind of like going free flow, and we're telling the GSX where do we want the plane. We use the arrow keys, and now we use F7 or F8, or if you want to go slower, the numeric keypad, number 1 and 3. Make sure you have the number lock selected. And I want the plane to stop right there, which is what would happen in the real life. Now, push tracks in real life are capable of doing these sharp curves, and they don't need to go straight, okay, as you can see in the taxi lane here. So what we would ask the tow truck is to take us and do a curve here and leave the plane in here. For that, you need to start turning left here as to be able to be facing in that direction. Now, we can choose the heading by using the keys I mentioned before, and now I see that there's a new taxi node, okay? This is not the same one as before. The one we saw before in the previous pushback were these two pushbacks, these two taxi nodes, okay? Now on this one, you have a new taxi node, which is called intermediate taxi node, pushback node, okay? Now it tells you here is the pushback to the left, which is the first one, and see, now it calls it pushback to the left instead of pushback number 1, okay, which is customized pushback number 1, and then you have pushback left. It's too confusing, but now I hope you understand what I mean and what it means. Now, intermediate pushback node, the corner of the pushback curve. Now, what is it saying exactly? Okay, it's telling you that this node right here, it's sort of like a reference. I'm going to turn this around so it's easier to move. Otherwise, it has no consequence on what is the heading of this node. It has no consequence whatsoever, so you can put it whichever way you want. Now, what I do is I usually put it in front of the plane. Now, you cannot have this taxi node behind, because what we're telling GSX is that this point, it's sort of like a reference point telling GSX that it has to go towards here. Now, if you put it behind the plane, you're telling the opposite to GSX, and it's gonna go crazy. Okay, you always have to put this in front of the plane, always, no matter which pushback you're going to do. And usually, I like to do a little bit towards the left of where I'm coming from. Okay, now if you do that and you put it a little bit to the front, it usually yields a very good pushback. Okay, so this is what I've done. I'm going to press the Y key, and I'm going to return to the 2D editor, the configured GSX customization panel, and you're going to see now that he has entered the coordinates of the final parking position, the final pushback position, not the intermediate one. Okay, the intermediate is not visible, it's within your ini file, you can see it there, it has a coordinates. And it also is going to add the heading that you have selected. Now, if we've done this right, we're going to have a pretty good pushback. Now, let's accelerate this. We're going to set the parking brake. We're going to request the pushback. Facing south, nose to the left. We don't want to start the engines. And let's see what we have done. Now, with this new system, we're capable of doing pushbacks that we were never capable to do before. Now, you saw in the previous version when there was a close and tight turn, this truck usually went crazy. Now it turns perfectly well and it stops exactly at the position I told him to. And this is probably what would happen in the real life. And it's okay to invade with your wing a little bit this corner of the parking adjacent to you. You would never hit the wings of the plane nor the tail. Now, I guess this is probably it. I just want to show you why this new system is so great, because we can do these very tight corners that in the case of Los Angeles, it's full of them. You see all this terminal have all this dead end where there's sort of like rat holes for pushback, and it's terrible for the plane. But now, as you can see, it's easy to do. I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to take you to another airport where you're going to find the advantages of this new pushback system. Okay, now we are in Chicago by Drauczewski Design. I was lucky enough to get a free copy from Stanislaw, so I could show you guys the advantages of this new version of GSX Level 2 version 2.6. Now, Chicago, as you probably know, it's one of the largest airports in the world, traffic-wise, and probably in all senses. And until very not so long ago, it was number one. And now it's Atlanta, number one. But still, it is a very congested airport. So the people who designed this airport came up with brilliant ideas on how to make the pushback not collapse and not to get in the way, or get as little as possible in the way of the other planes. And there's also very smart things that they came up on this, what I call rat holes over there, that they you use 3 different taxi lanes, and west, central, and east. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to show you excuse me, I wanted to show you something that we are capable of doing with this new version GSX Level 2.6. Now, you can see behind the plane you have this V-shape taxi pushback lanes, which is what they really are. And what are they for is, so when you're given clearance by the controller, you're asked to push back facing in that direction or in that direction. In other words, nose to the right, you would not make a complete nose to the right, taking the spot of the entrance of this parking spot. You would leave it like diagonal of the main taxi lane of the pushback. Okay, so in other words, face nose to the right will be here, nose to the left will be here, and the plane should be on top of this lane, yellow and white. And being this dot right there, this yellow dot, it should be the place where the tow truck should leave the front wheel of the plane. So if we take a look at what I did on this V5 configuration, Cartagena V5 configuration for Chicago that is soon to be released, we have the V4 already available, but I had this one ready long time ago, but I couldn't publish it because it wouldn't work on your system prior to the update. So if we do a customized pushback, and it's going to take us directly to pushback number 1, and it's going to say facing southeast, okay, which is the heading that we are right now. You see that we have the wheel stopped right on top of the yellow dot, and the plane is right on top of the yellow white line. Now we couldn't do that before, because if you go to the Fcat of Chicago, you see this line right here does not exist, which is basically here, okay? And we had to do, before this, in this scenery, we had to do it by hand using the FMC or whatever pushback system you have on this plane. Now, with GSX level 2 version 2.6, we are capable of doing this fantastic pushback. We have the intermediate taxi node both for both directions set on the same location. And this would be the other pushback, which is facing northeast. So as you can see, with this new version of GSX, we're capable of doing pretty much any pushback we desire. I hope you like this tutorial, and if you do, say you like on the video, or say you don't like, or subscribe or don't subscribe, or whatever. And hope to see you in the next chapter.